the session? Got it. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I know it's after lunchtime. Sometimes it's kind of get a downtime for most of us, but we're here today for an exciting opportunity. So we're going to present some information to you this afternoon that we think will just be great and uplifting for us, for the kids in our community, and for our families. So I want to welcome everyone to the CSE Broward's Food Insecurity Mitigation 2022 RFP Pre-Bid Conference. I am Dr. Sharetta Ramiki, and I serve as the Chief Equity and Community Engagement Officer here at CSE. And we have some other CSE staff on that I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with Andrew.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Leone. I'm Director of Communication and Community Engagement here at the Children's Services Council of Broward County. I am one of the leaders of the team that has worked on putting this procurement together, and that will be implementing it very excitedly so over the next foreseeable future. And I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Danielle.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Batchelder. I'm the Community Engagement Manager, and I'm very excited to see all of you here. And I will pass it on to Pooja.
Good afternoon. My name is Pooja Yagnik. I'm the Senior Systems and Procedures Manager. I will mostly be working with the technical side of the application piece. Thank you.
I think we have Marissa.
Hello, my name is Marissa Greif-Hackett, and I am an Assistant Director in the Research Department, and I will be talking about performance measures.
Thank you, Marissa. I think I saw Maxine.
Hi, I'm Maxine Golson. I'm a Compliance Accounting Manager in the Fiscal Department.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else. Any other CSC staff?
Kathleen is on.
Kathleen is on.
Okay.
I apologize, my camera, I'm trying to troubleshoot my camera, but my name is Kathleen Campbell. I'm Director of Finance here at CSC.
Thank you, Kathleen. And did I get all the CSC staff? That's everyone?
I see Jill.
Okay, Jill.
Yes, hello. I didn't realize I was doing introductions. I'm here just to kind of learn a little bit about it. My name is Jill Dennis-Lay, and I am Assistant Director, one of the Assistant Directors of Program Services. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Jill.
Prior to that, she was on AARP.
Someone is unmuted. Could you mute yourself, please? Thank you. Thank you so much. As you know, at the CSC, our desire is that all children in Broward have the opportunity to realize their potential hopes and dreams. So, you know, we do that. We provide leadership, advocacy, and resources necessary to enhance and empower their lives. That includes even meeting their basic needs. Hence the reason we are here today. CSE has supported childhood hunger relief efforts since 2006. As the need grew, so did CSE's commitment and investment to address the issue. The growth has required us to conduct a competitive procurement process, so we're inviting qualified vendors to submit proposals to address food insecurity. Please note, and you will hear this more than once, and you will hear more about it during the conference, there are 3 available components under this RFP, and each component has a separate application. All proposals must be submitted by 4 p.m. You're gonna get tired of hearing me say this, 4 p.m. on July 8th, 2022, through our online contracts administration and procurement system, better known, you'll hear it called CAPS. So we're gonna go over our timetable. Just wanted to tell you, like, one of my favorite movies is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know if many of you know about that movie, but it was a movie where there was a search for a golden ticket to get access to the chocolate factory. But the golden ticket was not just about access, but opportunity, because one of the lucky ticket holders received the factory at the end. So y'all might be saying, Dr. Amiki, why are you telling us about Willy Wonka and the chocolate factory? Even though we're talking about food insecurity. But the reason I'm telling you that is because what you see on your screen right now is your golden ticket to this process. You know, we have provided this for you. This the timetable with important dates. So our recommendation is to print this out, post it somewhere visible, and use it as a continuous reminder and reference point as you go through this process. So let's review some of the key points. The application date begins June 3rd and will conclude at 4 p.m. on July 8th, not 4:01 p.m., 4 p.m., no exceptions. Do we have that in red? I'm not sure, but it should be no exceptions. And we don't want to hear, we're not going to accept computer issues or the dog ate the manuscript or power failures. There is no exception. It's going to be July the 8th at 4 p.m., okay? We are currently in the pre-bid conference, and this is your opportunity to ask questions about the procurement. At the close of this pre-bid conference, you will have until June the 10th at 5 p.m. to submit written questions in our online CAP system. So everything I'm kind of going over, you're going to hear more details about it as we go through this process. So, you know, write down your questions, put your questions in the chat, you know, and we'll make sure we get those addressed. Okay. We will post questions and answers from the pre-bid on June the 16th by 5 p.m. The question and answer document supersedes this Zoom recording. You know, we're recording this, but this is not our Bible. The recording is not our Bible. We record the pre-bid conferences and take the information we are sharing. Then we review those questions you've asked and the answers provided. And if necessary, to clarify, we will add additional information to the answers. We strongly encourage everyone to review the Q&A document when it's posted. So when it's posted, even if you didn't have a question or you thought you knew it all, we highly, highly recommend you pull that document up and use it as a reference as you go through the process. Our Director of Finance, Kathleen Campbell, will be discussing the financial viability a little later, but for now, please note that the deadline for the financial viability is June the 17th by 4 p.m. Once again, no exceptions. If you don't meet this deadline, you will not be able to proceed with your application. So this is really your very first critical deadline that you got to make sure you get that in, okay? The review period for the financial viability will occur from June the 20th through the 24th with the results provided by June the 24th. Okay, deadline to submit the application in our CAP system is July the 8th by 4 p.m. Once again, no exceptions, okay? No exceptions. I will talk a little more about the fatal flaws in the cure process in a little bit, but for now, please note that the notice of fatal flaws and cure notices will occur during July the 11th through the 14th. Applicant interviews will occur July the 27th through the 28th. So I recommend right now you block that date and those times off on your calendar. Awards will be presented to the council for review and approval on August the 18th at our council meeting. Contract negotiations will begin on August the 19th, and contracts will be executed beginning October the 1st, 2022. Okay. All right, you can move up. So who may apply? Applicants with experience in addressing food insecurity can submit applications or multiple applications for funding. They are expected to have an understanding of the community to be served and have demonstrated success providing community embedded and community-driven services. Applicants may be nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, incorporated or qualified to do business in the state of Florida or governmental entities. Proof of nonprofit status, for-profit status, or government entity status must be submitted upon request by CSC staff. As stipulated by state statute, we are prohibited from funding any entity under the jurisdiction of the Department of Education. So this is very critical. Therefore, the School Board of Broward County, including public and charter schools, are not eligible to apply for this RFP. The service, goal, and budgeted amount. The intent of this RFP is to procure services which will address food insecurity among children, youth, and their families in Broward County. We are seeking to promote efforts to increase economic sufficiency, self-sufficiency, and food security for families. We have budgeted $1 million for effective food insecurity mitigation programs for FY year 22-23. There are multiple awards are anticipated to be ensured countywide access to these critical programs is available. You will hear more about the scope of service work later, so I'm not going to go into that. I'll leave that up to the professionals who work so diligently on defining that. So the next thing is the cone of silence. To protect the integrity of the procurement process, a cone of silence is designed to shield against undue influences prior to issuing a recommendation for a contract award. So, we under the code of silence, potential bidders, vendors, service providers, and consultants cannot communicate regarding this competitive procurement with CSC professional staff, our CEO and his or her staff, Children's Services Council members, or the review committee. So you can't talk to them regarding that. We are under the code of silence. Right now, next is the pre-bid. We are currently doing that, so I don't need to tell you all about that and all the details regarding the pre-bid, so you can go up. Application submission components. There you go, we're right there, you caught up with me. Documentation needed for submission is listed here. I'm not gonna read them all, but once again, the key is to ensure that your application is submitted by when? July 8th at 4 p.m. The initial term of services for the contracts awarded on this procurement is October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023, with eligibility for up to 4 renewal periods, which will conclude September 30th, 2027. Core contracts. In attachments 7 and 8 in the packet, make sure before you even start writing anything, you pull those 2 attachments and read them thoroughly. These terms and conditions of the CSC core contract, they are non-negotiable, can't be changed. We will not take out. So if you can't adhere to those terms, then you might not be eligible or willing to apply for this process, because we will not negotiate the things that are in the core contract. So my suggestion would be is to have your legal advisors read over it, and you read over it to see if that's something that you are willing or able to do. Okay, so we're going back to page 13, the conflict of interest. And you probably just scroll down. All the other stuff you can read. I'm not gonna read word for word for you, because we're trying to get to some of the real core parts that probably leads to a lot of discussion. So the conflict of interest means all applicants must disclose the nature and existence of the listed relationships in the application. Such disclosure must be submitted in the application for funding and the relevant questions on conflict of interest. So you look at that section, look at those types of relationships that are identified. If you are, you are in one of those, you need to make sure you disclose that information. And the cure process, I had mentioned previously that I will provide a little bit more detail around this. This is so we can give a little grace. If there are minor omissions or things that doesn't modify or change the application too much, we can give you the opportunity to correct it. So CSC will give you notice, and you would have like 24 hours from that notice to make those corrections. If you fail to do it, this is a courtesy. This is not a requirement for CSC to do this for you. So if we are saying, hey, we're giving you an opportunity to make a minor correction, please take it serious and respond accordingly. That's all for my part right now. Any questions at this time regarding anything that I've covered thus far? If you don't want to do it verbally, you can put it in the chat and we will make sure that they are response to them. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, Danielle. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to what I call part of my A team, Andrew Leone, the Director of Communications and Community Engagement.
Thank you so much, Sharetta. It's great to be here, everyone, and excited about this process. We wanted to start by revisiting a little bit of what Sharetta touched upon briefly earlier in terms of the actual components of this request for proposals. As Sharetta mentioned, we are making available approximately $1 million for organizations to provide effective food insecurity mitigation programs for fiscal year 22-23. We are anticipating multiple awards so as to ensure that there is county-wide access to these critical programs. And the way that we are making these funds available and these awards available is through 3 separate applications for fundings, AFFs for short. The first one is to continue something that we have been doing at some level for some time, which is through summer break spot enrichment programs, up to $150,000 to provide not just food, but also enrichment opportunities for children who would not otherwise have access to programs over the summer, children who are unlikely to be participating in summer camps or other structured activities. So there are environments where they can use certainly the food component, but also learning opportunities, safety, fun, all kinds of other activities that make for a fun summer and a fun time for them and to have as other children do. The second one is, and we are expecting multiple awards for this, the school break supplemental meals. And this is not to coincide with the summer break spot food coverage. During other breaks, during say winter break, spring break, many children do not have access to nutritious food and other opportunities to be free from hunger. And then, you know, when we look at what we're actually proposing or asking for here, we'll go into more details, but this is an opportunity for children, for families to receive food during times that are not covered by the summer break spot through different delivery mechanisms. And we anticipate just one award for this particular component. And then the meat and potatoes here is really the markets. We are expecting to fund up to $700,000 here to multiple providers because there are many different ways in which we can address hunger and food insecurity through different mechanisms. We want to make sure that we are all part of a process where we can tap into different ways to do this. The important thing here is that these markets, whether they're fixed so that people would go to, or they are mobile so that we go into the community, are made available, and there are some descriptions related to it in more detail in the actual application for funding that we will be going over in a few minutes. I just want to make sure that we talk about the desired populations here. Needless to say, these funds are subject to budget availability. Things may change after that. You know, that would need to be revisited, but you know, typically that is not an issue. But we have to say that. And then the desired populations, we are basically intending to serve all families in Broward County who self-identify as food insecure. There are no set criterias. If they're coming if they perceive themselves to be in need, we intend to be able to serve them. We know the youth and families to be served include those who live in the areas demonstrating the highest needs, as represented by the ALICE report. And perhaps you're familiar with it, but they are families that are working families and still cannot make ends meet or have a difficult time making ends meet. food desert mapping, and or by free and reduced lunch demographics. So those are the intended populations for this RFP. Just get to the components. We talked about some of these briefly, but here we go into a little more detail. There are 3 components to this request for proposal, like we said, and you may apply for 1, for 2, or all 3. If you, as an organization, if any organization feels they can submit a viable proposal. The summer break spot enrichment, like I said, is intended to coordinate community enrichment services to enhance federally funded summer break spot meals programs, also referred to as the Summer Food Services Program. The selected provider should be familiar with and able to build community partnerships with existing summer programming that could be available to the youth, and should build in funds to purchase supplies and programming not otherwise available. These services are intended for children who are less likely, like I said, to participate in structured out of school time programs, should be provided in locations that are easily accessible to them, such as housing authority sites. Then, as we said, the school break supplemental meals, providing, and we want to make sure it's clear, we're looking for programs that can provide at least a breakfast and lunch to youth during the Broward County Public Schools winter and spring break holidays. Those dates vary according to the school board calendar, so that is important to note. The meal should be easy for a child or youth to prepare with no cooking or measuring required. So you can't send.
Andrew, I'm sorry to interrupt. The screen is not moving, it's frozen.
I'm sorry, about now. Are we in the program components?
We're
yes.
All good now.
See that now?
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank
you. So like we were saying, with the school break supplemental meals, we want to make sure that these meals are easily assembled, or there is no cooking or measuring required for children or youth to access them. After school meal program providers can be considered to expand their current feeding programs, but be clear that CSC funds should only be requested for funding ancillary costs. So if you're already a provider, this is for something else, not covered by the federal government. And once again, the markets. They serve families in need by complementing other food insecurity mitigation efforts. These should be designed to allow families to go through the market and take what they need. Ideally, they can choose, or be provided with pre-assembled boxes. And all through the pandemic, we all went through that, with various outreach delivery mechanisms. These markets are designated for youth and their families, should be easily accessible to desired populations, and can be offered daily, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Now, the CSC does a lot of community events, and we do look for those who are selected to be funded for the markets to support at least one CSC community events with a food distribution upon request. We are still seeing a huge need for food and supports from folks that come out to these community events, as we have started having them again. So we do ask, we will ask that at least one such event be supported. I want to go now, I'm going to minimize the screen for just a second, just so that we can see once again the agenda. We have covered the food insecurity mitigation programs, desire population, required components. Now I'm going to switch to the actual attachments that you will have seen as you have downloaded as you have access through CAPS. So let me go back to attachments 1 and 2, which refer to the summer break spot. Let's find it quick. Okay. So, and again, there will be opportunities to ask questions here. This is the actual application for the funding. the AFF. It goes into great detail as to what is required of you, what forms are required of you, what agency details are required, and this specifies the rating levels for specific questions. You will see that some questions have points attached, some questions do not. So just if you say, well, question 1 says maximum points 15 and the second one doesn't say anything, it's not an oversight. Just, it's just we are looking for specific areas to actually rate, and other information that we do need that doesn't need to be rated, we're not asking, and we are not adding to the rating process. So in this case, there are the 3 applications obviously are similar in many ways, but there are some critical different components to each. Just because you've seen one, don't assume that you've seen all 3. So in this particular case, we're talking about the summer break spot. There are some elements of this that require you to answer questions specific to summer break spot. And for example, let me just go down to the page that I want to make sure. The program design, that is a critical component of this particular funding, right? Is the agency already a certified sponsor of the USDA Summer Feeding Program? Yes or no? But either way, if not, will you have a sponsor who is certified? So either way, because you answer no doesn't mean that you're not qualified. If you answer no, the important thing is that you do have someone that can administer the summer break spot. Describing the populations and how long you plan to offer this is specific to this particular request for funding, which is we expect a minimum of 8 weeks of program actually being served. It could be up to 10, but at least that many. So at your leisure, obviously, you can go and scroll through. As we've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again in terms of the terms of agreement, you can see in the documents what the expected contractual time is. And then here is the rating tool. So the rating tool, of course, is for the raters eventually, but it is also your tool to self-rate and to see, okay, I'm really strong here. I'm not, how can I enhance my application as you self-rate? And here you have the actual table and tool to say, okay, in this particular first question, and these questions, of course, refer back to what I've shared earlier in the application for funding. Question number 1, is my response incomplete, acceptable, or excellent? And there are things that I need to work on as I put this together to enhance my score. So even though ultimately this is the rater's tool, this is also your tool to ensure that you're submitting a strong application as possible. And you will see again that each one of these questions refers back to the document that we saw before, attachment 1 in this particular case. I'm just scrolling through it. Obviously, I'm not going to read through all this. It is a bit of an exercise, but you do have time. I just want to get down now to the second one, which is the school break supplemental meals that we discussed. That's a separate application. We talked about wanting to reach and support and feed children and families during times that are not covered by summer break spot. And here the same, parts of it, like I said, will be the same for all 3 of these documents, the forms. Some of the questions are similar in nature. But here again, you will find there are some elements that would be different. And a very, very important difference here is that one, that this program design, it would be a fatal flaw if you cannot offer meals during the winter summer breaks according to the Broward County Public Schools calendar. So if you're saying, oh, this is a great thing, I can do it, and then you scroll down to this, so yeah, but I can only do it in July, then this is not an application for you. It's a, you don't proceed. You would need to be able to provide the service during the summer, the winter and spring breaks, at the very least, as determined by the Broward County Public Schools. There is another very important component here. And again, I'm not going through all the questions, but this is very important, because if you're going to be delivering prepared meals, it can't just be out of anybody's kitchen with no oversight. For everyone's sake and safety, you must have a current food permit from the Broward County Health Department or from the Florida Health Department, because we want to make sure that the families are receiving food that is safe. And that is part of the certification process. So do you have a current sanitation certificate from the county health department? If you have access to a kitchen, you want to make sure that that kitchen adheres to everything that's required for the food to be prepared, packaged, and delivered safely. So those are very important components, different in this particular AFF from all the other ones. I see there are going to be hands. So again, to reiterate, there are opportunities at the end of each section to ask questions. I see Danny answer that. So we will give everyone opportunities to ask their questions. And if we cannot answer them immediately, as Sharetta has committed, we will endeavor to answer them on our CAP system. So through this, there are other elements that are specific to this particular one. After school meal program providers can be considered to expand their current feeding programs. However, again, it cannot be to expand an already existing program, but that is already covered by the federal government. So that is a question to consider. We're going to go through all of this to the rating tools. Here again, you will have an opportunity to first rate yourself before you submit. We strongly encourage anyway, to see where your strength and your opportunities to enhance your application lie. And then thirdly, the markets that we talked about. Here again, most of it is similar to the other ones. There are the requests that at least one CSC funded or supported community event be supported by food distribution is not a rated request, but we want to make sure that it is part of that. I think we have, this is very important in this particular one, because we want to make sure that the locational services, days of operation, they meet the needs of the participants. So, we want to be cognizant of the fact that the participants are the ones that need to be served, and that you can't just show up someplace, but you have an actual memorandum of agreement or understanding with the site, so that there are no interruptions to the program, or there are no surprises the day of the program, of the actual market. So you would have to share those memorandums of agreement. Say, for example, you're working at a school, or with a housing authority, or anyone that would allow you to provide this service on their site. You want to include a memorandum of agreement to make sure that everybody is clear this is happening then and when, and where, I should say. One major item that we're trying to address, like we talked about food deserts, we're talking about lack of access to nutritious food. So we do want to know, how will participants, and I'm just jumping around a little bit, you can look through all of them, but some of the reasons why we chisel these together as they are are being explained a little in more detail here, but addressing food deserts, which is a big issue, we want to make sure that that is done with fresh fruits and vegetables, nutritious foods, not just bringing MREs or so. As I said, there are some elements here that are specific, and you will see in the rating tool that we assign points accordingly. Can ask questions in a few minutes, but what I wanted to do was go back and clarify a little bit about the actual term of agreement. Because part of what we were trying to do through putting out this request for proposals was to create a little more stability in the process. Most of previous CSC funding in these was per year, and in this case it would still be, but here is an opportunity to, upon review of outcomes and effectiveness of the program, to renew the contract for up to 5 years, basically. So you would have the first year, and then the first optional renewal would be starting October 1st of 2023 next year, so on, all the way through October 1st, 2026, expiring September 30th, 2027. What happens then is that there will probably be another procurement, unless we have solved world hunger or at least Broward hunger. There will be another procurement that will be designed the same way or redesigned accordingly, but that is the idea here with the terms of agreement and an explanation of that for those who are curious. And now we do have an opportunity for questions for those who have them. If you would raise your hand, I'd seen Mark before raise his hand.
Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Pooja.
Yes, then. Go ahead.
And we're going to let Pooja has an announcement before we move forward.
Yes.
So Andrew already sort of mentioned it. At the end of each section, all of you will have an opportunity to ask questions. When you do ask a question, can you also note your question in the chat addressed to everybody? It will just be an easy way to not repeat questions and also for note taking. So please type it in the chat before you verbalize it on here. Thank you.
We see a question on how do we raise our hand. So there is a little icon, and I'm looking for it.
It's under reactions. You click on reactions. There's a place to raise your hand. And then Christine has already put her question in the chat, and if she wants to say it out loud, if that's.
Oh, sure, Danielle, thank you. For the MOAs, the Memorandums of Agreement, so by the time that July 8th at 4 p.m. rolls around, we would need to have the whole first year's MOAs completed, even if we're doing a pop-up nature where we go into just a parking lot and not even utilize the building from that agency. And also, I don't know if all of the, if we'll be able to finalize all of the sites. The sites may change over the course of 12 months, with it being due in July and not starting until October 1, through the following year. So just wanted to get clarification on that. And then I had also another one on the program design. Let's see. Question 1.
Markets, yes.
Yeah, on the identify and describe the population to be served. Since this is a children's focused funding organization, the CSC, how do you want us to count children and families? I think it might be helpful for all of us who are applying to get a little bit of an idea. Do you need sign-in sheets? Does the adult picking up the food need to identify how many adults and children are in the family? Is this anecdotal? But we will need to know this in order to determine how many people we can serve at each event and how you're counting adults and children in each household? Thank you.
Those are all great questions, Christine. Rather than answering them right now, because like you said, these would be pertinent to just about everybody, let's give us an opportunity to make sure that also the ones that are not on this call right now, that are still going through the process, will get an answer posted, because there are some nuances here that require a little bit of extra thought, and we want to make sure we answer fully.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I see Amy Freund. If you would unmute.
There we go.
I'm sorry. I do see your question also in the chat, Amy. I didn't know if you wanted to ask it verbally as well.
Yeah, I do want to ask it verbally.
Sure.
So as we read these questions, many of them do not apply to the way we have traditionally done our work, and actually would inhibit our ability to do what we do well. There's whole sections, for instance, on staffing, that much of it doesn't actually apply to what we do. And it has lots of points. Are we going to be rated down because we only have one part-time employee? Are we going to be rated down because we have volunteers covering a lot of things that a normal place would have paid people to do? Like, is that going to hurt us? There's many places where we're just not that big, you know?
Right. So in terms of volunteers, volunteers are staff when they're volunteering for you. But again, there too, we see the question. We are going to be making sure that the answer is thorough and complete. It is also a very good question, because we want to make sure that this opportunity is open to agencies big and small. So we will certainly revisit with a fuller answer, so hopefully to your satisfaction. Okay, Mark, I see your question here.
Yeah, it's totally self-serving. Is Swim Central, since it's now written into the RFP, are they going to be contractually obligated by CSC to provide swim classes for the break spot?
That is also a very good question. I will answer it after I see their contract.
All right.
Which, but it is that is the intention. And they have made a commitment, but the official answer, like Sharetta said, will be in the answer in caps. The conversations have been had and are being had with Swim Central as we speak, related to a whole host of things, but that's the idea.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn Collins.
Hello.
Hi, Lynn.
So I have the question about I'm just making sure it's the right one. It's it's not the market, it's so sorry, I'm on the wrong page, the supplemental meals.
Yeah, I see that.
Break.
Yeah.
In the application, the question for program design, the fatal flaws for food permits and sanitation certificate.
Yes.
I would like to get clarification. Is it the location that has to have the food permit and the sanitation certificate, or is it the agency applying? Because it would be a fatal flaw if it's the agency.
No, I see from your question here and perhaps it's the same question, that if you use a caterer who has the inspection and permit, right? That's what you're asking. If you're using a caterer that has the inspection and permit, and that certifies safe food preparation and delivery, that is not a fatal flaw.
Okay, because the way the question is written and the way the rating tool asks you to respond to the question, I imagine if somebody who doesn't know anything about this is reading it, it's going to be a fatal flaw and we wouldn't qualify. So if that could be looked at, that would be great. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. I think I see another question from Christine.
Andrew, excuse me, I will hold off on the budget and the finance questions until.
Oh yeah, budget related, yes.
So I think it was one more that wasn't related. Amy had another question.
Yes, Amy, I see your other question. What is defined as a community effort as opposed to a formal or informal partnership? My first response to that would be that they're, if I'm understanding the question correctly, they're one and the same. Community effort of formal or informal partnership. Formal or informal partnership would be a community effort.
It's separated differently when you read the attachment. They ask what community efforts you've participated in, and then they ask about informal or formal partnerships. They're two separate questions.
Okay, we will look at that and provide an answer as to whether we mean a similar thing, or maybe Danny is in a position to, it's not coming to me as a separate thing, but Danny also spent a lot of time putting this together. Do you have a different answer for me?
Let me look at the question real quick to make sure I have a full answer for you.
Okay, thank you. And we will, as we stated, make sure that that is answered in our question and answer document. So we'll get an answer for you, Amy. Thank you.
I had one more note. I just wanted to ask if you guys could post all of the attendance and contact information for this meeting so that we could collaborate.
I don't know that we can do that, but I will find out, and if we can, we will, and if we can't, we won't.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we will let you know either way, Lynn.
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay.
All right. So now Dr. Marissa Grief-Hackett will be joining us to talk about performance measure in data management. Marissa.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, okay. So this is going to be very brief. In your AFF, there are 2 response items concerning performance measures, and these are going to be very individualized to your proposal. So there aren't expectations of specific standardized assessments or anything like that that will go across all of the agencies that apply. So what I want you to think about are the particular elements that are pertinent to the distribution of the deliverables in your agency that help you count your numbers. So this could, I'm going to give some examples, but it's not limited to these examples. You need to think about your own program design, but number of families served, number of food bags distributed, pounds of food, number of events. And so you really just have to be thoughtful about your service delivery and what you will contribute to that process in terms of counting the important elements of your service delivery. You might also use satisfaction surveys. I wanted to keep that in mind as well. And let me just make sure I've covered it. Yes. And then the second thing that's very important is that you will describe how you will reliably collect that data and then also safely store the data. So at some point, the data will be transmitted to CSC, but we want you to give some thought as to how you will collect and store that data. And obviously data storage is very important for security. And that is all I have to say. Are there questions?
We don't see any questions or hands raised.
If I may, I just want to touch on what Marissa said. We are here to work with you. Marissa and her team in RAP are here to work with us, not against us. So please don't feel like this is something that's going to impede or stop or slow you down. So So I just wanted to make sure to highlight that because Marissa's fantastic and the RAP team is fantastic. So please don't feel that it's something that's going to make life impossible.
Thank you for saying that. And I guess I didn't really express that as generously as you did. We are definitely here to work with you. So just in your application, try to be as realistic as possible as to what you can collect. And of course, upon awarding and the proposal being accepted, then we will work with you to make sure things can actually be feasible. So, but do your best to write what you can in the proposal, and we're here to work with how you do things. I hope that's good enough.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I see, Holly, you have a question in the chat.
Okay, so Holly, are you here? I can read your. Oh,
hi,
hello.
sorry. You were talking about it, information and keeping it confidential and everything. What if we don't collect the family's data and stuff? So our information would basically just be based on numbers. Of course, we keep that confidential, but is that okay that we're not a company that collects families' information?
So I'm going to comment or respond to that in writing. Again, just like Andrew mentioned, so that everyone can have, so I can thoughtfully answer the question, but also so that everyone can have the same information. What has been done traditionally in the past is very specific to the organization and the capacity to collect that information in the organization. Okay, so that's my sort of preview of the answer, but I will respond to that more fully in writing.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes. Yes. And I guess that also kind of answers Brenaire. Sorry if I'm not saying that name correctly. Does that help with the second question that's posted? It's very similar.
Yes, you did answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we want to acknowledge the other questions that have been posted, and we will, her and Amy, in writing.
Okay. All right. So I think next we're going to have Marissa. Next, we're going to have our Director of Finance, Kathleen Campbell, to come and present to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Remeke. I must apologize first for you not being able to see me on camera, but my camera was working this morning and now it's broken. So I hope you can hear me clearly. All right, so I'll be looking at the fiscal and the budget requirements under this RFP application. So starting on page 9 of your RFP document, all agencies applying for funding through the CSC must demonstrate financial solvency. And we do that by running what we call a financial viability test. Hence, in the CAP system, the financial viability section is due earlier. So as Dr. Remeke mentioned earlier, the fiscal viability section must be completed and submitted in CAPS by June 17 at 4 p.m. So please note that date. So this agency financial viability section is the first section of the CAPS application pretty much. So I encourage you, when you go in, just to take care of that section first, complete that section first. And what do we need in that section? We ask that you upload your most recent audited financial statements in that section. Now, if you're already funded by the CSC, it's highly likely that we would have your audited financial statements. So you can select that button that says CSC already has my audited financial statements. Now, if you, and by the most recent audited financial statements, I mean the most recent statements for your fiscal year that ended and the audit was completed within the last 6 months or 180 days. Now, if you already know about this fiscal viability test because you're funded by us and you know that you're going to need a fiscal sponsor, please indicate that when you're starting the application or at the top of the application, and then it will open up the fiscal sponsor section. And so you will, it will open up the fiscal sponsor section and you'll be able to upload the fiscal sponsor's information in there. Now, what if you don't have an audit? Okay, that's a very good question, because if you don't have an audit, you could also upload your most recent reviewed financial statements, but that is only if your total revenues, your agency's total revenues is 500,000 or less. If your agency's revenues are over 500,000, you definitely will need an audit, right? So if your fiscal year ended in December, well, I don't think December is a good time to use, but if your fiscal year ended on June 30 of 2021, we would have expected you to have had an audit of your financial statements by now. So that audit should have been completed by now. If it was your financial statement year end was December 31, you have up until June 30 to have the most recent audit. So we could take your prior year audited financial statements, which would be the prior year, but we encourage you to submit the most recent one. So if you have the December 31, 2021 statements, please submit those. Very good question. And I did speak about if your agency already is funded by CSC, then you do not have to submit your statements, just indicate that we have them already. Now, what is this financial viability test? It's in attachment 9, and Andrew has it on the screen. It's just a set of ratios that we run on your audited financial statements to demonstrate your financial solvency. And we do that because when you receive funding from the CSC, we pay you, excuse me, we pay you on a reimbursement basis. So what is going to happen is that we're going to ask you to provide these services upfront for the first month, right? So you're going to have to spend to provide those services, and then we'll reimburse you for the cost associated with those services at the end of the first month. It therefore means we want to see that you have some financial solvency, some working capital, some level of working capital to be able to pay those bills before we reimburse you. And so if you're going to spend upfront and bill us 30 days after, it may take us another 10 days to pay you. We want to know that you're in a good position to handle our funding. Now, if you are already, you already have a fiscal sponsor, you do not need to upload any information. If you already are funded by CSC and you have a fiscal sponsor, you do not need to upload the fiscal sponsor's audited statements because we would have those statements as well. So as I said before, the fiscal viability section, it must be submitted by June 17 at 4 p.m. After you submit those on June 17, we will review your audited financial statements, we'll run the test, and we will send the results back to you by June 24. Now, when we calculate the test, you do not pass, or your agency does not pass the financial viability test, then we will give you the opportunity to find a fiscal sponsor. So say you did not know you need a fiscal sponsor, but now after we run the test, you need a fiscal sponsor. We will give you time to get a fiscal sponsor and to submit the financial statements for the fiscal sponsor in caps. Now the deadline for that is June 30. All right, so we give you additional time. Now, why would you need a fiscal sponsor? If you can look at the test again, if you scored under 6, you will definitely need a fiscal sponsor. If you scored between 6 to 9, that's the provisional category, you may be awarded up to $80,800 on your own, okay? if you are seeking more funding than that, then I would suggest that you get a fiscal sponsor who would help you to get more funding. Now, if you scored in the section of 10 to 13, that's conditional, and you could get up to $215,400. If you score over 14 points, your award will not be limited, will only be limited by the RFP allocation and your award amount. So, who is the fiscal sponsor? So the fiscal sponsor is defined on page 20 of the RFP document, and the fiscal sponsor's role is to receive and administer the funding provided by the CSC. The fiscal sponsor will act as a capacity building resource for your agency, and you will sign a tri-party agreement. So your agreement with CSC will also be with the fiscal sponsor. Now, the CSC is very generous in that the CSC will assist you with the administrative costs associated with the fiscal sponsor. And so you will receive an amount. If you have a fiscal sponsor, you can receive an amount not to exceed $25,000 annually, or up to 7% of the allocation. All right, so now I'm going to look at the budget, and your budget is included in attachment 11 of the RFP document. In addition to the budget, we also have the budget preparation guidelines, which are attached in attachment 10. Now, the budget preparation guidelines just gives you a guide, as it says, as to how you prepare your budget, what you include on each line item. Of course, you have the salary section as we are looking at here. So you will complete this section, and I think it's pretty intuitive. If you have any questions on that, you can ask me at the end of this presentation. Andrew, can you go down a little bit more to scroll down? Thank you. So here. So then you, so we also have like startup expenses. And that will be on lines 80, budget lines 8092 through to budget line 8095. And startup expenses are those costs that you will need if you're a new program to get your program out of the ground, right? Up and running. So you may want to consider this carefully in preparing your budget. You know, things like marketing, or, you know, getting your program ready, getting your staff, recruiting staff, purchasing, you know, materials that you'll need to get your program up and running. Those must be expended within the first 90 days of your contract. So please consider what those expenses are going to be when you prepare your budget. The CSC also requires a 5% match funding requirement from the lead applicant agency. So it's that 5%, it's pretty much your skin in the game, all right? So we want to see that you have some share in operating the program. Additionally, the CSC will give you a 12% administrative fee. So am I at the right place? Yes, a 12% administrative fee. Therefore, if you're awarded $112,000, $12,000 out of that can be your administrative expenses, up to $12,000 out of that. It can be less if your admin cost is not that much, but yes. And I think I have covered pretty much. If you need further information on the fiscal sponsor requirements, you can go to pages 17 to 18 of your RFP document. It also will assist you if you're going to get a fiscal sponsor on some of the things that should be included in your fiscal sponsor agreement. And that will be on page 21. Thank you so much. I will take the questions.
The first person we have with a question in the chat for budget was Christine. If you want to go first, and then I'll call you in order of when your questions were submitted in the chat.
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you, Danielle. I have one question regarding the background screening costs and how that would work with a volunteer-driven organization who's applying for the market category. Since we are a largely volunteer-driven organization, we will not know who might be delivering food to a mobile pop-up or who might be on the premises if we have a client choice pantry day or a drive-through or walk-up format. Can you please explain how many volunteers from the agency we would need to have completing the background screenings, or how we could best handle that? We have a core group of 30 volunteers.
I believe Andrew can answer that much better with regards to the program, but generally speaking, if the volunteer has to interact with children, they would need a level 2 background screening, and the costs for that can be included in your budget under line 8050. And if you're a new program, I know you may have additional background screening costs upfront that can be included in your startup cost as well.
Sure. I guess the concern is if we just have people who are drivers of a truck to a location, I mean, do all the staff, if they're not forward facing to the youth and families, need to go through this, or just the people who are going to be directly interacting with the families at the distribution site?
So as Kathleen said, absolutely, if they have interaction with children and families, they would have it. We will clarify further in our question and answer any other potential scenarios where that might be required. But yes, level 2 background screening is required for any forward-facing interacting staff and or volunteers as part of this process.
Okay, great. And I have two other questions. Transportation. In the past, we were able to capture any rental of a van for distribution of food and or possibly mileage or gasoline costs. Could you clarify if transportation will be possible to get reimbursed through the market program?
Yes, it's a part of the program cost. Yes.
Okay, because it in the RFP, it said that it was limited only to the summer break spot providers. So
they're two different things. The transportation under that line, that way that's billed, that's for transporting participants. You're transporting food, so that's going to be under other reimbursement.
Under other. Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then under salaries and wages, my organization typically has volunteers who receive stipends, and we don't have full-time staff with benefits. Would we be able to put all of the positions under 1300 contractual services and consultants, or what might you recommend for putting people in the budget who do not have a salary and benefit package?
You could put them in line 1300. Yeah, are they gonna be? Can we look more at that and answer you in writing?
Yes, that would be helpful. I think we will have in-kind people that we could show up under salaries, but they're really just, volunteers for the organization. Also, is there an acceptable hourly dollar amount for volunteers in Broward County that you would be okay with in terms of the 5% match? Because we have quite a few people in the agency who work with no salary whatsoever, and we would like guidance on the amount we can credit, for the 5% match for those people.
So 5% match can be both cash and in kind, but we will answer you in writing with regards to guidance on the rate here. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking what you would acknowledge as a fair rate in Broward County here in 2022.
And Christine, can you please put that in the chat? I don't have that question in the chat yet.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
I see a clarification from Mark from Meals on Wheels related to the previous question on the level 2. We will address it fully in our response. We all need a response to Mark Adler's level 2 info. Yes, you'll do, and we will address it more fully and accurately in writing.
And then Mark is actually the next person I have in order of budget questions.
Mine was pretty simple. I was just wondering if we don't have the staff names yet for next year, can we just leave those blank on the budget?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mine was easy.
And then Z, you're next.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So our question is we scored really well with the viability test, but we're questioning really in this short time frame. How do we get a review with such little time if we wanted to apply on our own without a fiscal agent? Because we clearly are financially viable, but the turnaround time, when I speak to my CPA, they have pre-existing commitments, a review, an audit takes months, he says, and then, a review even takes time. And in 2 weeks, would that need to be turned in with, our stuff on the 17th with the viability test? And if we can't, in a timely fashion, get a review, which it's not looking like, would we have to go then with a fiscal sponsor?
Yes, if you cannot have an audit or review within the time that it's due, I would recommend that you go with a fiscal sponsor.
Okay, thank you so much.
And then it looks like Amy, you're, hold on, sorry. Yes, Amy, you asked about in-kind donations.
Okay, yeah, so this is really important. We're in the same position as Zena. We're very financially solvent, but we do not have an audited statement. And if in-kind, like if our food donations of in-kind count as part of our revenue, it pushes us up, it pushes us over to the limit that requires an audit. Do those count, or are you only or is it only the actual revenues that we have?
So we look at the revenues on your financial statement. So if your accountant included those as revenues, then that, yes, would count towards the 500,000, which may or may not, which will put you over.
Okay.
Thing. Mm-hmm. So it depends on what your accountant recorded those as.
So it's actually good that he didn't. Is a reviewed financial statement the same thing as the financial statement produced by our accountant as we file our taxes each year?
No, the reviewed financial statement it's almost like an audit, but it's lesser in scope than an audit. It is prepared, the review is done by a certified public accountant, right? They look at your statements, they do analytics, and they provide a letter. So there must be a letter or from a CPA with those financial statements that they reviewed.
Okay.
But it's not as in-depth as the audit. And it's cheaper than an audit.
Okay.
Michael, you're next, but it looks like your question was the same as Amy's. So I'm going to move on if you're okay with that.
I'm totally cool with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark, you already asked. Amy, BJ, you're the next person who has a question that hasn't been addressed.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know, are you required to have the 5% if you have a fiscal sponsor?
Yes, you're required to have the match.
Thank you.
Any other questions I didn't get to? Going once, going twice. Thank you.
And just to know that the match could also come from, another community stakeholder or somebody else within your community that wants to match your program. Doesn't have to be from you, the lead agency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you everyone for your questions. Next, we're going to have Pooja to come on to talk about our contract administration and procurement system, CAPS. Pooja?
Thank you. Hi, everyone, again. I just want to reiterate how important it is to submit your application on time. The video on how to submit your application is available on our website. Andrew has shared it on our screen here. So you'll see the video on how to apply for an RFP through CAPS. You click on that hyperlink and it will take you to YouTube. And it's about a 20-minute long video, but I strongly suggest that you watch it before you start an application. It is also available under solicitation attachments. So when you are actually in your AFF answering questions, where all our solicitation attachments are, where the entire RFP document, rating tool, etc. are listed at the very bottom, you'll see a YouTube video link on how to apply tutorial. So again, I strongly encourage all of you to look at it before you start your application. Another thing I wanted to point out is that when you go in to start a new application, our database is connected to the SunBiz database. You will be required to enter your EIN number if you're not an already existing agency in our database. So if you look at the drop down, if your agency is not listed, the system will ask you to enter your EIN number. Sometimes SunBiz website does go down. If that's the case, we don't want you to wait. Just email helpdesk@csebrow.org with your agency name, your CEO, website, phone number, and we will set it up on the back end and inform you that it's been set up, so you'll be able to go in and proceed with the application. This happens sometimes, but it's just good to know if it happens, we can still fix it for you and add your agency in the database. The next item I want to talk about is all technical questions, which are non-programmatic questions, questions not associated with the AFF, should be emails to helpdesk@csebrow.org. This is our technical resource center. We will try our best to answer your questions as soon as possible in regular business hours, which are Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Please do not wait until the last day to submit your question. It may not be answered in time, which will hurt you and you won't be able to submit your application in time. So please, please, please submit them in advance. All non-technical programmatic questions can be asked through Ask a Question tab. So if you haven't asked it already in the pre-bid conference today, if something comes open to you after 4 p.m., you will be able to ask it through the Ask a Question tab in our CAPS system where you start your application. Again, you will need to be an authorized user of the system to ask a question. So the deadline for asking a question via CAPS is, let me just read it, June 10th at 5 p.m. So right at 5 p.m. or 5:01 p.m. that Ask a Question tab in CAPS will disappear. So make sure if you have a question, please, please, please ask it through Ask a Question, and then CSE will publish a document with all the questions and responses from today's pre-bid conference, along with anything submitted to us via CAPS by June 16th at 5 p.m. same place where you see the solicitation attachment, how to apply video. There'll be a link there posted, which will mark new with the responses noted there. So very important, the technology will automatically kick everybody out. Same thing, if it's July 8th and you're past the deadline of 4 p.m., at 4:01 p.m., the entire application solicitation will disappear from the system. So please be mindful. I cannot stress this enough that you submit on time. The next thing I want to talk about is, as Andrew previously mentioned, there are 3 separate applications of funding. So when you go on our website and you click here to apply, you will see a landing page with 3 AFFs. Make sure the application that you're completing is what you intend to apply for. At any point during the application process, you want to refer to which particular application you're in. It is listed on the top of the page. So just be mindful, we have 3 applications that you're in the correct one. There it is, of where you're going to. So if you click on the the summer break spot, you're filling out that application, the top will always say it's the summer break spot. We also advise you to label your application name correctly. So again, it's just a good reference point for you, because on your dashboard, if you're applying for all 3, you yourself will be able to differentiate them better. So label it properly for yourself, just some good markers there. So now that we have 3 applications, this means you have financial viability sections available for all 3. If you intend to apply for all 3, complete it. But let's say you start one application, you submit your financial viability to us, and now you want to apply for a second application. Normally, if you had 3 applications and you didn't do financial viability for any of the 3, you're not able to move forward or start an application once that financial viability deadline passes. But let's say you have applied for application A, and after the financial viability deadline passes, you have an interest in applying for application B, you're able to access application B under your first application where you did the financial viability. At the bottom right page, you can start an application for the other 2 areas. Again, this is only possible if you have at least submitted the financial viability section in at least one of the applications. If you have not done it for either of the 3, once that financial viability section passes, you have no way to start an application. Another important point is if you start an application and do not submit your financial viability, and if you continue working on the other areas, once that financial viability deadline passes, your application will be canceled. The system will not allow you to submit an application if all sections are not completed, and all sections have deadlines that you should be very mindful of. So that is basically what I wanted to note today. If you have any questions, please let me know. I see there are a few questions in the chat.
The first one was Z and then Allison.
Okay, Z, could you please state your question? Oh, yes, it will be available. We have recorded it. It is a public record. So yes, please submit a public records request and we will make it available for you.
Do you have to put in a request?
No, since it's here, we'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next is Allison. If you're applying for multiple, do you need multiple financial viability tests? Well, if you're applying for multiple, I think I explained it in my spiel that I did. The first one, you can submit your financial statements. For the next 2, you can say CSE already has them, or just attach them all together. If you're applying for one, want to apply for a second one after the financial viability has passed, as long as you've submitted for at least one, it will apply to as many as you start after the fact. Okay.
Looks like we have no more questions in the chat. Am I right, Danielle? All right. Well, that concludes our pre-bid conference today. We once again thank you for being here and thank you for your interest in serving children and families in Broward County. And we're just going to close with these last three things. Remember, question and answer document for the pre-bid goes up on June 16th at 5 p.m. And remember that the financial viability is due by June 17th at 4 p.m. And of course, we're going to say this all together. The application is due July the 8th by 4 p.m. So make sure you print out your golden ticket, the timeline, and you adhere to those dates, and look forward to receiving your great proposals. Everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you for joining us.